Jungkook finally reveals his shocking choice to marry someone else. Jimin's unexpected reaction changes everything in this emotional, dramatic story. "I chose someone to marry," Jungkook said, his voice cutting through the silence like glass shattering on marble. The room didn't breathe after that. Even the soft hum of the city outside seemed to collapse into nothing, as if the world itself had paused to hear what came next. The lights above flickered faintly, casting restless shadows across Jungkook's face, sharp, unreadable, almost unfamiliar. Jimin stood across from him, frozen mid-step, fingers still curled as if he had been about to reach out. "Say that again," Jimin whispered, but it wasn't really a request. It was disbelief clawing its way into sound. Jungkook swallowed, jaw tightening. He had rehearsed this moment in his head 100 times, each version cleaner, calmer, less cruel. None of them had prepared him for the way Jimin's eyes trembled, like something fragile inside them had already begun to fracture. "I chose someone," Jungkook repeated, quieter this time but heavier. "I'm getting married." The word married lingered in the air like smoke, suffocating, impossible to ignore. Jimin let out a soft laugh. It wasn't amusement, it was something far more dangerous, something broken. "Ah," he said, nodding slowly, his gaze dropping to the floor. "So that's it." For a moment, Jungkook thought, hoped that Jimin would yell, throw something, demand explanations. That would have been easier. Anger was something Jungkook knew how to face. But this calm, this quiet unraveling, it terrified him. Jimin lifted his head again, and when their eyes met, there was a sharpness there that hadn't existed before. "Who is it?" Jimin asked. The question was simple, too simple. Jungkook hesitated, and that hesitation was enough. Jimin noticed, of course he did. A bitter smile tugged at the corner of Jimin's lips. "You're hesitating," he murmured. "Why are you hesitating, Jungkook? Is it because I know them?" Jungkook exhaled slowly, running a hand through his hair. His thoughts tangled, refusing to line up into anything coherent. "It's not that simple," he said. Jimin's expression hardened instantly. "It never is with you," he snapped, the first crack in his composure finally breaking through. "Nothing is ever simple, nothing is ever clear, just secrets and half-truths." "That's not fair." "Fair?" Jimin's voice rose, sharp and incredulous. "You walk in here and tell me you're marrying someone and you want to talk about fair." The tension between them snapped tight, like a wire about to break. Jungkook took a step forward. "Jimin, listen." "No," Jimin stepped back just as quickly, creating distance like it was the only thing keeping him upright. "You don't get to say my name like that right now." The words hit harder than anything else. For years, Jungkook had said Jimin's name in 100 different ways. Soft, teasing, desperate, warm. Now it sounded wrong in his own mouth. Jimin turned away, packing once across the room before stopping near the window. The city lights reflected in the glass, blurring into streaks of gold and white. His reflection looked like a stranger. "Do you love them?" Jimin asked suddenly. Jungkook froze. The question echoed in his chest, heavier than the confession he had just made. Love. He had thought about that word too, turned it over, dissected it, tried to define it in a way that wouldn't hurt as much. But standing here now, with Jimin's back to him and the weight of everything unsaid pressing down. Jungkook started, then stopped. Silence answered for him. Jimin let out a slow breath, his shoulders rising and falling. "Right," he said quietly. "No, it's not like that," Jungkook said quickly, stepping forward again. "I care about them. This is something I have to do." "Have to?" Jimin turned sharply, eyes blazing now. "You have to marry someone." "You don't understand." "Then explain it." Jimin's voice cracked, raw and exposed. "For once, just explain it to me instead of deciding everything on your own." Jungkook flinched. Because Jimin was right. That had always been Jungkook's flaw, carrying everything alone, making choices in silence, believing he was protecting others when, in reality, he was only pushing them further away. "I'm trying to protect you," Jungkook said, the words slipping out before he could stop them. Jimin stared at him, stunned. Then he laughed again, louder this time, sharper. "Protect me," he repeated, "by marrying someone else." Jungkook clenched his fists. "It's not just that, there are things you do know, things that could." "Then tell me," Jimin shouted. The room seemed to shake with the force of it. Jungkook opened his mouth, but the words refused to come, because saying them out loud would make everything real. It would drag the past into the present, expose the truth he had been trying so hard to keep buried. And he wasn't ready. Maybe he never would be. Jimin watched him closely, reading the hesitation, the fear. And something in Jimin's expression shifted. Not anger this time. Something colder. I see, Jimin said softly. Jungkook's chest tightened. Jimin. You chose them, Jimin continued, his voice steady now in a way that felt far more dangerous than before. Not just to marry, you chose them over me. That's not true. Isn't it? Jimin tilted his head slightly, eyes searching Jungkook's face as if looking for something that was no longer there. Because from where I'm standing, it looks exactly like that. Jungkook shook his head, stepping closer despite himself. It's not about choosing, it's about responsibility. The word felt weak the moment it left his mouth. Jimin noticed. Responsibility, he repeated, tasting the word like it was something bitter. So that's what I am to you, something you can set aside when it becomes inconvenient. No, Jungkook said immediately. You're. He stopped. Because what was Jimin to him? The answer was there, buried deep, too dangerous to say out loud. Jimin waited. When Jungkook didn't finish, the silence said everything. Jimin's eyes flickered just for a second, and in that moment, all the hurt he had been holding back surfaced. Raw, unfiltered, impossible to hide. Yeah, Jimin said quietly, I thought so. He turned away again, this time heading toward the door. Panic surged through Jungkook's chest. Jimin, wait. Don't, Jimin said without turning around. The single word stopped Jungkook in his tracks. I don't think I can listen to anything else right now, Jimin continued, his voice trembling despite his effort to keep it steady. Not if it's going to sound like that. Jungkook's throat tightened. Like what? It's like goodbye. The word hit harder than anything else that had been said. Jungkook felt it settle deep in his chest, heavy and suffocating. That's not what this is, he said, but even to his own ears, it sounded uncertain. Jimin finally turned back, one last time. His eyes were shining now, though he refused to let the tears fall. You don't get to decide that alone, Jimin said. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Jimin gave a small, almost imperceptible nod, as if confirming something to himself. Congratulations, Jungkook, he said softly. The words were gentle, but they cut deeper than any blade. And then he walked out. The door closed with a quiet click that echoed far louder than any slam. Jungkook stood there, unmoving, staring at the empty space Jimin had left behind. The room felt colder now. Or maybe it was just him. He exhaled slowly, running a hand over his face, trying to steady the storm building inside him. This was the right choice. It had to be. Because if it was, then he had just lost the one person he could never afford to lose. And somewhere deep inside, a voice he had been trying to ignore whispered a truth he wasn't ready to face. He hadn't just chosen someone to marry. He had chosen a path that might destroy everything. The rain started the moment Jimin stepped outside, as if the sky itself had been holding its breath, waiting for the exact second his composure cracked. He didn't run. He didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, he walked slow, deliberate steps through the empty street, the cold drops soaking through his clothes, clinging to his skin like a reminder that this was real. Every word, every silence, every hesitation from Jungkook echoed in his head like a broken record. I chose someone to marry. Jimin let out a hollow laugh under his breath, dragging a hand through his wet hair. Of course you did, he muttered, voice barely audible beneath the rain. Of course you did it like this. His phone vibrated in his pocket. He ignored it. It buzzed again and again. Finally, with a sharp exhale, he pulled it out. Jungkook's name lit up the screen. Jimin stared at it for a long moment, thumb hovering over the answer button. Then he declined the call. Almost instantly, a message came through. Jungkook, please don't disappear like this. Jimin scoffed, typing back before he could stop himself. Jimin, you don't get to tell me what to do anymore. He hit send, shoving the phone back into his pocket as if it burned. Behind him, far down the street, a car door slammed. Jimin froze. Footsteps followed, quick, uneven, desperate. Jimin. He closed his eyes briefly. Of course Jungkook would come after him, he always did. Too late, too fast, too much. Jimin turned slowly, rain dripping from his lashes as he faced him again. Jungkook looked different out here, hair damp, breath visible in the cold air, eyes wide with something dangerously close to panic. You didn't have to chase me, Jimin said flatly. I did, Jungkook shot back, stepping closer. You just walked out, what was I supposed to do? Let me go. The words landed hard between them. Jungkook stopped. For a moment, neither of them spoke, the rain filling the silence with a relentless rhythm. I can't do that, Jungkook said finally, quieter now. Jimin tilted his head slightly, studying him. Why not, he asked. You seem pretty good at letting things go lately. Jungkook flinched. That's not fair, he said again, but the argument sounded weaker this time, like even he didn't believe it anymore. Jimin stepped closer, closing the distance just enough that the tension became unbearable. Then make it fair, Jimin said, voice low but sharp. Tell me the truth, all of it. Jungkook hesitated. Again. And that hesitation snapped something inside Jimin. You're doing it again, Jimin said, shaking his head, a bitter smile forming. You're choosing silence. You're choosing them even now. I'm not choosing them over you. Jungkook's voice rose, frustration breaking through. Why can't you understand that? Because you haven't given me anything to understand, Jimin shouted back, the anger finally spilling over. You walk in, drop something like that, and expect me to just, what, accept it? I thought you'd trust me. The moment the words left Jungkook's mouth, he knew they were wrong. Jimin's expression went completely still. Trust you, he repeated softly. There was no anger in his voice now. That was worse. I trusted you when you said we were okay, Jimin continued, each word precise, controlled. I trusted you when you told me not to worry about the rumors. I trusted you when you said you never shut me out again. Jungkook swallowed hard. And now you're telling me you're getting married, Jimin said, his voice trembling despite his effort to keep it steady. And you want me to trust that there's a good reason for it? There is, Jungkook insisted. Then say it. I can't. The words exploded out of him, raw and unfiltered. Silence followed. Jimin stared at him, something unreadable flickering in his eyes. You can't, he repeated. Jungkook ran a hand through his hair, packing once before stopping in front of him again. It's complicated, he said, his voice dropping. There are people involved, things from the past that haven't been resolved. If I tell you now, it could make everything worse. Jimin let out a sharp breath, almost laughing again. Everything's already worse, he said. Look at us. That hit harder than Jungkook expected. Because Jimin was right. This distance, this tension, this version of them standing in the rain like strangers, this was worse than anything Jungkook had tried to prevent. I'm trying to fix it, Jungkook said, almost pleading now. You just have to give me time. Jimin shook his head slowly. No, he said. Jungkook blinked, no. No more waiting, Jimin said firmly. No more half answers, no more secrets. I've done that long enough with you. Jungkook stepped closer again, his voice softer now, more fragile. Jimin, please. The way he said it, quiet, desperate, made Jimin hesitate for a fraction of a second. And Jungkook saw it. He reached out, fingers brushing against Jimin's wrist. Just trust me this one time, Jungkook said. Jimin looked down at their hands. The contact felt familiar. Too familiar. It brought back everything, the late nights, the quiet laughter, the unspoken things that had always existed between them, hovering just beneath the surface. For a moment, Jimin almost gave in. Almost. Then he pulled his hand away. You said that last time, Jimin said softly. Jungkook froze. And look where that got us, Jimin added. The distance between them returned instantly, colder than before. A car passed nearby, headlights cutting through the rain, briefly illuminating their faces. Jungkook's desperate, Jimin's guarded. "Who is it?" Jimin asked again, his voice quieter now but no less intense. "The person you're marrying." Jungkook closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, there was something different there. Resignation, maybe. "You don't know them," he said. Jimin's gaze sharpened. "That's a lie," he said immediately. Jungkook's jaw tightened. "I didn't say you've never met them," he corrected. "I said you don't know them." "That doesn't make it better." "I know." Another pause. The rain began to ease, softening into a steady drizzle, but the tension between them didn't fade. "If I tell you," Jungkook said slowly, "you have to promise you won't do anything reckless." Jimin raised an eyebrow slightly. "That depends on what you tell me." "Jimin, I'm not making promises I can't keep." Jungkook hesitated again, then exhaled sharply, as if making a decision he couldn't take back. "They're not just someone I chose," he said. "They're someone I owe." Jimin frowned. "Oh," he repeated. Jungkook nodded, his expression darkening. "A long time ago I made a mistake," he said. "One that affected more than just me. This marriage, it's a way to fix that." Jimin stared at him, trying to piece it together. "What kind of mistake requires marriage to fix?" he asked, his voice low, almost dangerous. Jungkook didn't answer immediately. And in that silence, realization began to creep in. Jimin's eyes widened slightly. "No," he said, almost under his breath, "don't tell me." "It's not what you think," Jungkook said quickly. "Then what is it?" Jimin pressed. Jungkook looked away. That was all the answer Jimin needed. A sharp, disbelieving laugh escaped him. "You're unbelievable," Jimin said, shaking his head. "You're actually unbelievable." "It's not that simple." "It is that simple," Jimin cut him off. "You made a mistake and now you're marrying someone to fix it. That's your solution." "I didn't have a choice." "There's always a choice." "Not this time," Jungkook snapped, his voice breaking. "You think I want this? You think this is easy for me?" Jimin went quiet. For a moment, the anger faded, replaced by something else, something more complicated. "Then why does it feel like you've already accepted it?" Jimin asked softly. Jungkook didn't answer. Because he had. In some way, deep down, he had already decided this was the path he would take, no matter the cost. And that was what hurt Jimin the most. "You didn't even fight for us," Jimin said. The accusation hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. Jungkook's chest tightened painfully. "I am fighting," he said, but the words sounded hollow. Jimin shook his head. "No," he said quietly, "you're surrendering." The rain finally stopped. But neither of them felt any relief. They stood there facing each other, soaked and exhausted, the weight of everything unsaid pressing down on them. And for the first time, Jungkook realized something he hadn't allowed himself to admit before. This wasn't just about a marriage. It was about everything they had never said, and everything they might never get the chance to say again. The silence didn't break gently, it shattered. "You're lying to me." Jimin's voice came out low, but it carried a sharpness that cut deeper than any shout. The street felt too small for the tension between them now, like the air itself had turned against them. Jungkook's head snapped up. "I'm not." "You are." Jimin stepped closer again, his eyes blazing, searching every inch of Jungkook's face like he was trying to rip the truth out of him. "You're not just hiding something, you're rewriting it, making it sound noble, like you're sacrificing yourself for some grand reason." Jungkook clenched his jaw. "You think I'd lie about something like this?" "I don't think," Jimin said, voice trembling. "I know." The words landed hard, final. For a moment, Jungkook just stared at him, something flickering in his expression, hurt anger, something darker. "Then what do you want me to say?" Jungkook asked, his voice rising. "That I'm doing this because I want to. That I woke up one day and decided to ruin everything between us for fun." Jimin didn't hesitate. "Yes." Jungkook froze. "Because right now," Jimin continued, stepping even closer, close enough that their breaths collided, "that's exactly what it looks like." Jungkook let out a disbelieving laugh, running his hands through his damp hair. You're unbelievable. No, Jimin shot back instantly. You are. You expect me to just stand here and accept this without knowing anything, without even knowing who she is. Jungkook's body stiffened. That single word, she hung in the air like a loaded weapon. Jimin caught it immediately. So it is a woman, Jimin said slowly, his voice dropping, something dangerous creeping in. Jungkook didn't respond. That was enough. Jimin let out a hollow breath, nodding once as if confirming something painful. Wow, he whispered, you really went all the way, didn't you? It's not like that, Jungkook said quickly. Then what is it like? Jimin demanded, because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're about to marry a woman you won't even defend to me. Jungkook stepped forward, frustration boiling over. I'm not defending her because she doesn't need defending. Then why can't you say her name? Jimin challenged immediately. Silence. Jungkook's fists tightened at his sides. Jimin's lips curved into a bitter smile. Exactly. The tension snapped again, sharper this time. She has nothing to do with this, Jungkook said, his voice low and strained. Jimin let out a sharp laugh. Nothing to do with this. You're marrying her, Jungkook. She has everything to do with this. Jungkook shook his head, packing a step away before turning back. You don't understand the situation. Then make me understand, Jimin's voice cracked, the raw emotion breaking through again. Because right now, all I see is you choosing someone else over me and expecting me to just accept it like I'm nothing. You're not nothing, Jungkook snapped. Then what am I? Jimin fired back instantly. The question hit like a collision. Jungkook opened his mouth. And stopped. Because the truth was there, heavy and dangerous, sitting on the edge of his tongue. Jimin watched him, waiting. Seconds passed. Too many. And then Jimin's expression changed again. Something inside him closed off completely. Right, Jimin said softly, that's what I thought. He stepped back, the distance between them suddenly feeling permanent. I'm not going to beg you to explain yourself, Jimin continued, his voice quieter now, colder. If you can't even tell me what I am to you, then I already have my answer. Jungkook's chest tightened painfully. Jimin, don't twist this. I'm not twisting anything, Jimin cut him off. I'm just finally seeing it clearly. Jungkook took a step forward, desperation creeping into his voice. You're making this worse than it is. Jimin laughed again, shaking his head. Worse, you just told me you're getting married and refused to tell me why, who, or what it means for us. How exactly could this be any better? Jungkook hesitated again. And that hesitation, again, said everything. Jimin's eyes darkened. Gods, he muttered under his breath, you really don't get it, do you? Then tell me, Jungkook snapped, frustration spilling over. Tell me what I'm missing, because clearly you've already decided what this means without even trying to understand my side. Jimin stared at him, stunned. Then something broke. You want me to say it? Jimin asked, his voice suddenly quiet, too quiet. Jungkook's breath caught. Say what? Jimin held his gaze, unflinching now. You chose someone else, Jimin said. Not just to marry. You chose someone else to stand next to you, to build a life with, to trust with everything you couldn't even say to me. Jungkook shook his head immediately. That's not true. Then prove it. You can't, Jimin cut in, his voice rising again. Because if it wasn't true, you wouldn't be standing here hiding things from me like I'm some stranger you owe nothing to. I'm doing this for a reason, Jungkook shouted. Then what is it? Jimin shouted back. The sound echoed down the empty street, raw and unfiltered. Jungkook's chest heaved, his thoughts spiraling. Say it. Just say it. But the moment he imagined the words leaving his mouth, everything felt like it would collapse. Jimin watched him closely, his expression shifting again, less anger now, more something else. Something sharper. Is she pregnant? Jimin asked suddenly. The question hit like a bomb. Jungkook's eyes widened, caught completely off guard. What? He breathed. Jimin stepped closer, his gaze piercing. Is that it? You made a mistake, like you said, and now you're marrying her to take responsibility. No, Jungkook said immediately, too quickly. Jimin narrowed his eyes. That sounded defensive. Because you're wrong, Jungkook insisted, his voice tight. Then what is it? Jimin pressed, relentless now. Because I'm running out of ways to justify this in my head, Jungkook, and none of them make you look good. Jungkook clenched his fists. I told you, he said through gritted teeth, it's complicated. Jimin let out a long, slow breath, then nodded. Okay, he said. The sudden shift in his tone made Jungkook pause. Okay, he repeated. Yeah, Jimin said, his voice calm again, but this calm felt different. Final, you don't want to tell me, fine. Jungkook frowned, Jimin. I'm done asking, Jimin continued. I'm done chasing answers you don't want to give. Jungkook's stomach dropped. That's it, he asked, you're just walking away. Jimin tilted his head slightly, studying him. What else do you want me to do? He asked. Stand here and keep begging you to trust me while you plan a wedding with someone else. It's not like that, Jungkook said again, but his voice lacked conviction now. Jimin smiled faintly. You keep saying that, he murmured, but you never prove it. Jungkook stepped forward again, reaching for him, but stopped just short this time. Because something in Jimin's eyes told him not to. You're really going to leave it like this? Jungkook asked. Jimin held his gaze for a long moment. Then he said something that made everything stop. You already did. Jungkook's breath caught. The weight of those words settled between them, heavy and suffocating. For the first time, Jungkook didn't know what to say. And Jimin looked tired. Not angry. Not broken. Just tired. I don't hate you, Jimin said quietly. Jungkook blinked, caught off guard. But I can't stay like this, Jimin continued. I can't keep being the person who waits for you to decide if I matter. You do matter, Jungkook said quickly, stepping closer again. Jimin shook his head gently. Then you should have shown me that before telling me you're marrying someone else. The words were soft, but they hit harder than anything else. Jungkook felt something in his chest crack, sharp and sudden. I thought I had more time, he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. Jimin's expression flickered. Time for what? Jungkook hesitated. Then, for the first time, his composure slipped completely. Time to fix it, he said. Time to figure out how to make this right without losing you. Jimin stared at him, something unreadable in his eyes. And how's that working out for you? He asked quietly. Jungkook didn't answer. Because he already knew. Jimin let out a soft breath, nodding slightly. Yeah, he said, that's what I thought. Another silence settled between them. Heavier than before. And this time, neither of them tried to break it. When Jimin finally stepped back, it didn't feel like hesitation anymore. It felt like a decision. I hope whatever you're doing is worth it, Jimin said. Jungkook's chest tightened. It won't be, he admitted. Jimin's eyes flickered at that, but he didn't stop. Then maybe you should have thought about that before, Jimin said softly. And with that, he turned and walked away again. This time, Jungkook didn't chase him. He just stood there, watching as the distance grew, every step Jimin took carving something deeper into his chest. The street felt emptier than before. Colder. And for the first time, Jungkook realized something that made his breath hitch. This wasn't just a misunderstanding anymore. It was the beginning of something irreversible. The door slammed harder than Jimin intended, the echo ricocheting through the empty apartment like a gunshot. He stood there for a moment, chest rising and falling, fingers still gripping the handle as if letting go would make everything that just happened real. Too real. Damn it, he muttered, dragging a hand down his face before kicking off his shoes carelessly. They skidded across the floor, hitting the wall with a dull thud. The silence inside felt suffocating. Every corner of the room held memories, laughter, quiet conversations, moments that now felt like they belonged to a different lifetime. His gaze lingered on the couch where Jungkook used to sprawl lazily, on the kitchen counter where they had argued over something stupid and ended up laughing minutes later. Jimin let out a sharp breath. "Stop it," he whispered to himself, shaking his head as if he could physically force those images away. His phone buzzed again. He didn't need to look. He knew. But this time, instead of ignoring it, he pulled it out. Jungkook. Calling again. Jimin stared at the screen, his thumb hovering for only a second before he answered. "What?" he said immediately, voice flat, emotionless. There was a pause on the other end. Then Jungkook's voice came through, rough, uneven. "You made it home." Jimin scoffed softly. "What, you tracking me now?" "I was worried." "You don't get to be worried." The words came out sharper than he expected, but he didn't take them back. Another pause. "I know," Jungkook said quietly. That almost made it worse. Jimin walked further into the apartment, packing slowly as he pressed the phone tighter to his ear. "So why are you calling?" "I didn't want to end it like that." Jimin laughed, a hollow sound. "You mean with the truth?" "No," Jungkook said quickly, "with you walking away like that." Jimin stopped packing. "And how else was I supposed to walk away?" he asked, voice lowering dangerously, smiling, "Congratulating you properly this time." "That's not what I meant." "Then say what you mean, Jungkook," Jimin snapped. "For once, just say it clearly." Silence. Jimin closed his eyes briefly, exhaling through his nose. "Yeah," he muttered, "that's what I thought." "I don't want to lose you," Jungkook said suddenly. The words landed heavily, catching Jimin off guard. For a moment, he didn't respond. Then he let out a quiet, disbelieving breath. "You already are," Jimin said. "No," Jungkook insisted, his voice tightening. "Not if we can just talk, properly." Jimin shook his head, even though Jungkook couldn't see him. "We are talking," he said. "You're just not saying anything." "I'm trying to protect you." "There you go again," Jimin cut in, frustration rising. "Protecting me from what? The truth." "It's not that simple." "Then make it simple," Jimin shouted, his voice echoing slightly in the empty apartment. "Because I'm done trying to guess what's going on in your head." Jungkook's breathing was audible now, uneven, like he was packing on the other side of the line. "If I tell you," Jungkook said slowly, "it could put you in a situation you can't get out of." Jimin frowned, confusion cutting through his anger. "What does that even mean?" he asked. "It means," Jungkook continued, his voice lower now, more serious than Jimin had ever heard it, "this isn't just about me, or us." Jimin's grip on the phone tightened. "Then what is it about?" he pressed. Another pause. "Then, come outside," Jungkook said. Jimin blinked. "What?" "I'm downstairs." The words hit instantly. Jimin's heart skipped, his eyes darting toward the door as if he could see through it. "You're what?" he asked, disbelief creeping in. "I didn't leave," Jungkook admitted. "I've been here." Something twisted in Jimin's chest. "You've been standing outside this whole time?" he asked. "Yes." "Why?" "Because I knew you wouldn't come back if I left." The honesty in that answer made Jimin's throat tighten. For a moment, he didn't move. Didn't breathe. "Jimin," Jungkook said softly through the phone, "please, just come down, let me explain." Jimin hesitated. Every instinct told him not to. That going back out there would only drag him deeper into something he was already struggling to escape. But another part of him, the part that still cared, still needed answers, refused to let this end in silence. 5 minutes, Jimin said finally. "I'll wait." The call ended. Jimin stood there for a moment longer, staring at his reflection in the darkened window. "You're an idiot," he muttered to himself. Then he grabbed his jacket and headed out. Jungkook was exactly where he said he'd be. Standing under the dim light near the entrance, hands shoved into his pockets, head slightly bowed. He looked exhausted. More than that. He looked like someone carrying something too heavy to hold anymore. Jimin slowed as he approached, stopping a few steps away. You've got 5 minutes, Jimin said. Jungkook lifted his head. Their eyes met. And for a second, everything felt exactly like before. Until it didn't. I lied earlier, Jungkook said immediately. Jimin frowned. About what? When I said you don't know them, Jungkook replied. Jimin's stomach dropped slightly. What? Jungkook took a step closer. You do know them. Jimin's pulse quickened. Then who is it? He asked, his voice sharper now. Jungkook hesitated. But only for a second this time. It's someone from before, he said. Someone connected to something I should have told you about a long time ago. Jimin stared at him, trying to piece it together. What are you talking about? He asked. Jungkook exhaled slowly, his gaze dropping briefly before meeting Jimin again. A few years ago, he began, there was an incident, something that got buried before it could turn into something bigger. Jimin's brows furrowed. What kind of incident? Jungkook's jaw tightened. The kind that ruins people, he said quietly. A chill ran down Jimin's spine. Jungkook. I was involved, Jungkook continued. Not directly, but enough that it mattered, enough that it left a mark. Jimin felt his heartbeat picking up, unease creeping in. And this has to do with the person you're marrying, he asked. Jungkook nodded once. Yes. Jimin let out a slow breath, running a hand through his hair. Okay, he said, then explain it properly, no more vague answers. Jungkook looked at him for a long moment. Then he said something that made the ground feel like it shifted beneath Jimin's feet. They're the one who took the fall for me. Silence. Complete and absolute. Jimin's eyes widened slightly. What? Jungkook swallowed hard. There was a situation, he said, his voice heavy. Something illegal. Something that could have destroyed everything, my career, my life, everything. Jimin stared at him, disbelief flooding his expression. And you're saying someone else? They stepped in, Jungkook cut in. They took responsibility, publicly, quietly, it never traced back to me. Jimin's breath hitched. Why? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Jungkook didn't answer immediately. And that silence spoke volumes. Jimin shook his head slowly, realization dawning. No, he said, don't tell me. I owe them, Jungkook said firmly, more than I can ever repay. Jimin let out a sharp, disbelieving laugh. So your solution is to marry them, he asked. That's how you repay someone for taking the fall for you. It's not just that, Jungkook insisted. There are conditions, expectations, things that were agreed on back then. Jimin stared at him like he didn't recognize him anymore. You made a deal like that, he asked, his voice cracking slightly, without telling anyone, without telling me. I didn't know how. You didn't try, Jimin snapped. The tension surged again, heavier than before. You let someone ruin their life for you, Jimin continued, his voice shaking now with a mix of anger and disbelief. And instead of fixing it properly, you're just binding yourself to them like this. I am fixing it, Jungkook shot back. This is the only way left. There's always another way. Not anymore, Jungkook's voice broke, raw and desperate. It's too late for that. The words echoed between them. Jimin's chest rose and fell unevenly. So that's it, he said slowly. You're just going to sacrifice everything because of a mistake you made years ago. Jungkook didn't deny it. And that was the worst part. Jimin looked at him, really looked at him, and saw it clearly now. The guilt, the weight, the decision that had already been made long before tonight. You decided this already, Jimin said. Jungkook's silence confirmed it. Jimin let out a shaky breath, stepping back. Wow, he whispered, you really did. Jimin. No, Jimin said, raising a hand to stop him. Don't. His eyes were glassy now, but he refused to let the tears fall. So where does that leave me? He asked quietly. Jungkook's chest tightened. You said you didn't want to lose me, Jimin continued, but you've already made a choice that pushes me out of your life. That's not what I want. But it's what you're doing, Jimin said. Silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. Jimin nodded slowly. Okay, he said. Jungkook's stomach dropped at the calmness in his tone. Okay, he repeated. Jimin met his gaze one last time. I understand now, he said. And somehow that hurt more than anything else. Because there was no anger left in his voice. Just acceptance. And that acceptance felt like the end of something neither of them had been ready to lose. I'm going to meet them. The words came out of Jimin's mouth before he could reconsider them, sharp and final, slicing straight through the fragile stillness that had settled between them. Jungkook's head snapped up instantly. No. It wasn't loud, but it was immediate, instinctive. And that alone said too much. Jimin's eyes narrowed. You don't get to say no. Yes, I do, Jungkook shot back, stepping forward, his voice suddenly tight with urgency. You have no idea what you're walking into. Jimin let out a humorless laugh. Funny, I could say the same about you. This isn't the same, Jungkook insisted. Then explain why, Jimin challenged, his voice rising again. Explain why meeting the person you're going to marry is somehow more dangerous than you marrying them in the first place. Jungkook's jaw clenched, his silence stretching just a second too long. Jimin caught it. You're scared, Jimin said quietly. Jungkook's gaze flickered. That's why you don't want me to meet them, Jimin continued, stepping closer, his voice lowering into something almost dangerous. Not because of me, because of what I might find out. That's not it, Jungkook said quickly. Then what is it, Jimin pressed. Because right now, it feels like you're hiding more than just some old mistake. Jungkook ran a hand through his hair, frustration bleeding into every movement. You're not listening to me. This situation is already unstable, if you get involved. I already am involved, Jimin cut him off sharply. You made sure of that the second you told me you're marrying someone else. The words echoed between them, raw and undeniable. Jungkook took a step back, like he physically felt the impact. Jimin didn't stop. You think you can just drop something like that into my life and then tell me to stay out of it? Jimin's voice trembled, but his gaze stayed locked on Jungkook's. You don't get to control how I react to this. I'm not trying to control you, Jungkook said, though even he didn't sound convinced. You are, Jimin fired back immediately. You're deciding what I should know, what I shouldn't see, what risks I should or shouldn't take, without even asking me. Jungkook opened his mouth, then closed it again. Because Jimin was right. Again. Look, Jungkook said finally, softer now, trying to rein himself in. If you meet them, it won't just be a conversation. It could turn into something else, something messy. Jimin tilted his head slightly, studying him. Messy how? He asked. Jungkook hesitated. That hesitation was all Jimin needed. Oh my god, Jimin breathed, realization creeping in. They don't want me involved, do they? Jungkook didn't answer. Of course they don't, Jimin muttered, shaking his head. Why would they? I'm just the inconvenient part of your life they have to tolerate. That's not true, Jungkook said quickly. Then what is true? Jimin demanded. Because every time I ask you for something real, you give me another half answer. Jungkook stepped closer again, his voice dropping. They know about you. Jimin froze. What? Jungkook held his gaze steady this time. They've always known. The words hit like a shockwave. Jimin's mind raced, trying to process it. They knew about us, he asked slowly. Jungkook nodded once. Yes. A strange, hollow laugh escaped Jimin. And they still agreed to marry you, he asked. Jungkook didn't respond immediately. Jimin's smile faded. Why? He asked, his voice quieter now, something unsettled creeping in. Jungkook exhaled slowly, like he was stepping into something he couldn't step back from. Because this isn't just about me repaying a debt, he said. It's about protecting something they have. Jimin frowned. What does that mean? Jungkook hesitated again, then said it. Leverage. The word dropped heavily between them. Jimin's eyes sharpened instantly. Leverage over you, he asked. Jungkook didn't deny it. A chill ran through Jimin. So this person, the one you're marrying, Jimin said slowly, piecing it together, they didn't just take the fall for you, they kept something that could still ruin you. Jungkook's silence confirmed it. Jimin let out a disbelieving breath, stepping back as if he needed space to think. That's not a debt, he said, that's blackmail. It's not that simple, Jungkook said quickly. It is that simple, Jimin shot back. They have something on you, and now they're using it to trap you into a marriage. I agreed to it, Jungkook insisted. Because you didn't have a choice, Jimin's voice rose again. Don't try to make it sound like this is some honorable decision, you're being cornered. Jungkook's expression hardened. I'm choosing to take responsibility. For what? Jimin demanded. A mistake that someone else already paid for. Jungkook's silence stretched. And this time, Jimin saw it clearly. There was more. Tell me everything, Jimin said, his voice dropping, serious now in a way it hadn't been before. Not just the part that makes you look guilty, all of it. Jungkook hesitated. But the look in Jimin's eyes didn't waver. Fine, Jungkook said finally, his voice quiet but heavy. You want the truth, then listen carefully. Jimin didn't move. I wasn't the only one involved, Jungkook continued. There were others, people who could have been dragged into it if things went wrong. Jimin's brows furrowed. And this person protected all of you, he asked. Yes. And now they're collecting on that, Jimin pressed. Jungkook nodded. Jimin let out a slow breath, his mind racing. This is insane, he muttered. You're letting someone control your entire future because of something that happened years ago. I'm preventing something worse from happening now, Jungkook said. Like what? Jungkook's gaze darkened. Like everything coming out. The weight of that settled heavily. Jimin stared at him, trying to imagine it, the scandal, the fallout, the destruction Jungkook seemed so certain of. And you think marrying them will keep that buried? Jimin asked. Yes. And you're just okay with that? Jimin's voice softened slightly, something almost fragile breaking through. Living like that. Jungkook didn't answer immediately. Because he wasn't okay with it. But he had accepted it. I can live with it, he said finally. Jimin's expression shifted instantly. Something in his eyes cracked. No, Jimin said quietly, you can't. Jungkook frowned. What? You can't live with that, Jimin repeated, stepping closer again. Not like this, not with someone you don't. He stopped himself. Jungkook noticed. Don't what? He asked. Jimin shook his head, looking away briefly. It doesn't matter, he muttered. It does, Jungkook pressed. Jimin let out a frustrated breath. Fine, he snapped, turning back to him. Not with someone you don't love. The word hung in the air. Heavy. Unavoidable. Jungkook's chest tightened. You don't know that, he said, though his voice lacked conviction. Jimin stared at him. Then say it, Jimin challenged. Say you love them. Jungkook's breath hitched. The silence that followed was answer enough. Jimin nodded slowly, his gaze dropping for a second before lifting again. Yeah, he said softly, that's what I thought. Jungkook stepped forward, his voice urgent. That doesn't mean. It means everything, Jimin cut in, because you're about to marry someone you don't love while pushing away someone who. He stopped again. Jungkook's heart pounded. Who what? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Jimin's jaw tightened. For a moment, it looked like he wouldn't say it. Then, someone who stayed, Jimin said. The words were quieter than expected. But they hit harder than anything else. Jungkook froze. Jimin laughed softly, though there was no humor in it. I stayed through everything, he continued. Through your silence, your distance, your secrets. I stayed even when I knew you weren't telling me everything. Jungkook's chest ached. And now you're asking me to just accept this, Jimin said. Accept that you're going to marry someone else for reasons you won't even fully explain. I'm explaining now, Jungkook said weakly. Too late, Jimin replied immediately. The finality in his voice made Jungkook's stomach drop. It's not too late, Jungkook insisted, stepping closer again. We can still figure this out. How? Jimin asked genuinely. Tell me how, Jungkook, because from where I'm standing. The only way this works is if one of us walks away. Jungkook didn't answer. Because he didn't have one. Jimin nodded slightly, as if confirming it for himself. That's what I thought, he said. Silence settled again, heavier than ever. But this time it felt different. Not just like an ending. Like a point of no return. Jimin took a slow step back, his eyes never leaving Jungkook. I meant what I said earlier, he said quietly. I'm going to meet them. Jungkook's expression tightened. Jimin. I'm not asking for permission, Jimin cut in. I'm telling you. Jungkook clenched his fists, his voice dropping. If you do this, things will change. Jimin tilted his head slightly. They already have. Another silence. Longer this time. Heavier. Then Jimin turned. And as he walked away again, there was something different in his steps. Not hesitation. Not anger. Determination. And for the first time since this all began, Jungkook felt something far more dangerous than fear settle deep in his chest. Because this time, Jimin wasn't just reacting. He was about to uncover everything Jungkook had been trying to keep hidden. The message arrived before sunrise. Jimin hadn't slept, he hadn't even tried. The city outside had slowly shifted from neon shadows to pale grey light, and he had remained exactly where he was, sitting on the edge of his bed, phone clenched in his hand, thoughts unraveling in loops he couldn't escape. When the screen lit up, his heart jumped despite himself. Unknown number. For a second, he considered ignoring it. Then it buzzed again. A message. If you really want answers, come alone. Jimin's eyes narrowed, his pulse instantly sharpening. Another message followed. *8 a.m. Don't bring Jungkook. His grip tightened around the phone. So this was it. Not a coincidence, not timing. They knew. They had been watching. Jimin exhaled slowly, running a hand through his hair as adrenaline began to settle into something colder, more focused. Of course, he muttered, of course it's like this. His phone rang almost immediately after. Jungkook. Jimin stared at the name flashing on the screen, something twisting in his chest. For a brief moment he thought about answering, about telling him everything, about not walking into something this dangerous alone. But then he remembered Jungkook's face, the hesitation, the silence, the way he had already chosen a path that didn't include him. Jimin declined the call. He typed quickly instead. Don't contact me today. He hit send before he could rethink it. Then he stood, grabbed his jacket, and walked out without looking back. The place was quieter than expected. No crowds, no obvious signs of anything unusual. Just a sleek building tucked between others, its glass exterior reflecting the early morning light in a way that felt almost too clean, too calculated. Jimin stopped across the street, studying it. This is where you wanted me to come, he murmured under his breath. His instincts screamed at him to leave. To turn around, call Jungkook, forget all of this before it spiraled into something worse. But another part of him, the part that needed the truth more than anything, pushed him forward. He crossed the street. Each step felt heavier than the last. When he reached the entrance, the doors slid open automatically. Inside, the air was cold. Too cold. A receptionist looked up briefly, her expression neutral, almost rehearsed. Name, she asked. Jimin hesitated for a fraction of a second. Jimin. She nodded as if she had been expecting it. Go up, she said simply. No questions. No verification. Just permission. That alone sent a chill down his spine. The elevator ride felt longer than it should have. Each floor ticked by slowly, the numbers glowing softly above the door. When it finally stopped, the doors opened to a quiet hallway. At the end of it, a single figure. Jimin's steps slowed. His breath caught. Because the person standing there wasn't what he expected. They were calm, composed, dressed impeccably like someone who had everything under control. And when they looked up, meeting Jimin's eyes, they smiled. "You came," they said. Their voice was smooth, almost warm. It didn't match the situation at all. Jimin stopped a few feet away, his gaze sharp, guarded. "You wanted to see me," he said. The person tilted their head slightly, studying him. "I was curious," they replied, "about the person Jungkook couldn't stop talking about." Jimin's stomach tightened. "He talks about me," Jimin asked before he could stop himself. A soft laugh. "More than he should," they said. Something about that answer felt intentional. Like it was meant to provoke something. Jimin didn't take the bait. "Let's skip that," he said. "You asked me to come, so talk." The person's smile widened slightly. "Straight to the point," they murmured. "I like that." Jimin crossed his arms, his posture rigid. "Why are you marrying him?" he asked. No hesitation. No build-up. Just the question that had been burning since the beginning. The person didn't seem surprised. Instead, they stepped closer. "Why do you think?" they asked. Jimin's eyes narrowed. "Because you have something on him," he said. "Something you're using to force this." The person chuckled softly. "Force," they repeated. "That's a strong word." "It's the right word," Jimin said coldly. The person studied him for a moment, then sighed lightly. "You're not entirely wrong," they admitted. Jimin's jaw tightened. "Then say it clearly," he demanded. "You're blackmailing him." The word hung in the air. For a second, the person's expression didn't change. Then, a slow smile. "If that makes it easier for you to understand, sure," they said. Jimin felt anger spike sharply. "You're unbelievable," he muttered. "You're really going to ruin his life like this." The person's gaze sharpened slightly. "Ruin," they echoed. "That's an interesting perspective." "What else would you call it?" Jimin shot back. "Forcing someone into a marriage they don't want." The person tilted their head again, studying him more closely now. "And how do you know he doesn't want it?" they asked. Jimin didn't hesitate. "Because I know him." A pause. Then a soft, almost amused smile. "Do you?" they asked. The question hit differently. Jimin's expression hardened. "More than you do," he said. The person let out a quiet laugh. "That's what you think," they murmured. Jimin's patience snapped. "Stop playing games," he said sharply. "If you have something to say, say it." The air shifted. The warmth in the person's demeanor faded slightly, replaced by something colder. "All right," they said. "Let's be honest then." Jimin didn't move. "You're not here because you care about the truth," they continued. "You're here because you're trying to find a way to stop this." Jimin's eyes flickered. "That's not." "It is," they cut in smoothly. "And that's fine, I'd do the same in your position." Jimin clenched his fists. "Then you understand why I'm not leaving without answers," he said. The person nodded. "It's fair enough." They turned slightly, walking a few steps before stopping near the window. "Jungkook told you about the past," they said, "about the mistake." "Yes." "And what did he tell you about me?" they asked. Jimin hesitated. "That you took the fall for him," he said. A soft hum. "Partially true," they replied. Jimin frowned, partially. The person turned back, their gaze sharp now. "I didn't just take the fall," they said. "I controlled the outcome." Jimin's stomach dropped slightly. "What does that mean?" he asked. "It means," they continued calmly, "without me, that situation wouldn't have disappeared. It would have escalated." Jimin's mind raced. So you're saying you didn't just help him, he said slowly. You made sure it stayed buried. Yes. And now you're using that to control him. A small smile. I prefer to call it maintaining balance. Jimin let out a harsh breath. That's twisted, he said. Is it, they asked, or is it just reality? Jimin shook his head. No, he said, this isn't normal. You don't get to own someone's future just because you helped them once. The person's expression darkened slightly. It was once, they said quietly. Jimin stilled. What? He asked. The person held his gaze. There were multiple situations, they said, multiple times where things could have gone very wrong. Jimin's chest tightened. And Jungkook, he never told you that, did he? They added. Silence. Jimin's thoughts spiraled. No, he said slowly, he didn't. The person nodded as if that confirmed something. Of course he didn't, they murmured. Jimin felt something shift inside him. Not just anger now. Doubt. What else didn't he tell me? Jimin asked quietly. The person watched him carefully. A lot, they said. Jimin clenched his jaw. Then start talking. The person stepped closer again, their gaze unwavering. Before I do, they said, there's something you should understand. Jimin didn't respond. This isn't just about him, they continued, or me, or even you. Jimin frowned, then what is it about? The person's expression turned serious, completely, for the first time. It's about what happens if the truth comes out, they said. Jimin's pulse quickened. And what happens? He asked. A pause. Then, everything burns. The words landed heavy. Jimin stared at them, searching for any sign of exaggeration. He didn't find any. You're being dramatic, Jimin said, though his voice lacked certainty. Am I? They asked softly. Jimin didn't answer. Because something about the way they said it didn't feel like a lie. And you think marrying him prevents that? Jimin asked. Yes. Jimin shook his head slowly. That's insane. Maybe, they said, but it works. Jimin took a step back, running a hand through his hair as his thoughts tangled. This isn't right, he said. There has to be another way. There isn't, they replied calmly. There always is, Jimin insisted. The person studied him for a long moment. Then they said something that made everything stop. You really love him, don't you? Jimin froze. The question hit too directly. Too precisely. That's not, he started. But the words didn't come. The person smiled slightly. I thought so, they said. Jimin's chest tightened, his emotions colliding all at once. Don't change the subject, he said sharply. I'm not, they replied. I'm just trying to understand how far you're willing to go. Jimin's gaze hardened. As far as I need to, he said. The person's smile faded. Be careful, they said quietly. Jimin frowned. What's that supposed to mean? It means, they continued, their voice lower now, the deeper you dig into this, the harder it will be to walk away. Jimin didn't hesitate. I'm not planning to. The person held his gaze for a long moment. Then they nodded slightly. Then I guess there's no stopping this, they said. Jimin's pulse quickened. What do you mean? The person's expression shifted again, something unreadable flickering in their eyes. I mean, they said slowly, you're about to learn things that will change everything you think you know about him. Jimin's breath hitched. Then tell me, he said. The person stepped closer. Close enough that the air between them felt tight. And then, they leaned in slightly and whispered, something that made Jimin's entire world tilt. His eyes widened. His breath stopped. And for the first time since this all began. Jimin looked shaken. Jimin staggered back as if the words had physically struck him, his shoulder brushing the cold glass behind him. You're lying. It came out almost instinctively, like his mind was trying to reject what it had just heard before it could take root. The person didn't move. Didn't react. They simply watched him calm, composed, too calm for someone who had just dropped something that devastating. I wish I was, they said quietly. Jimin shook his head, a disbelieving laugh slipping out as he dragged a hand over his mouth. No, he said again, more firmly this time. No, that doesn't make sense. He couldn't. He did, they interrupted, not raising their voice, but cutting through his denial with precision. Jimin's chest tightened painfully. You're twisting it, Jimin snapped, his voice rising. You're taking something out of context and turning it into something worse. Am I? They asked softly. Jimin's eyes burned with frustration, confusion, anger, all colliding at once. Yes, he insisted, because if that were true I would have known, he would have told me. The person tilted their head slightly, studying him again with that same unsettling calm. You're still holding on to that, they murmured. Holding on to what? Jimin shot back. The idea that he tells you everything. Jimin clenched his fists. He doesn't lie to me, Jimin said. The person's expression didn't change. That's not what I said. The implication hit harder than a direct accusation. Jimin's breath faltered for just a second. That's not the same thing, he said quickly, but there was a crack in his voice now. The person took a slow step closer. No, they agreed, it's not. Silence stretched between them again, heavier now, suffocating. Jimin looked away briefly, trying to steady himself, but the words kept echoing in his head. He knew. He chose it. And you were never supposed to find out. Why are you telling me this? Jimin asked suddenly, his voice low, cautious now. The person's gaze sharpened slightly. Because you came looking for the truth, they said. That's not the whole reason, Jimin pressed. People like you don't just give information for free. A faint smile returned. You're smarter than I expected, they said. Jimin didn't react. So what do you want? He asked. Because this isn't charity, this is strategy. The person took another step, closing the distance just enough to make the tension unbearable. I want you to understand something, they said. Jimin's eyes narrowed. What? That Jungkook isn't as innocent as you think. The words landed heavily. Jimin felt anger surge again, pushing back against the doubt that had started to creep in. I never said he was innocent, Jimin replied sharply. I said he wouldn't do something like that. And yet, they said quietly, he did. Jimin shook his head, packing a step away as if he needed space to think. No, he muttered, there's something missing, there's always something missing with you. The person watched him carefully. Then ask the right question, they said. Jimin stopped. Slowly turned back. Why? He asked. The person's expression shifted slightly, like that was the question they had been waiting for. Because he had something to protect, they said. Jimin frowned. What? They held his gaze. It's you. The word hit like a shockwave. Jimin's breath caught. What? Jungkook. Protecting him. From what? That doesn't make sense, Jimin said quickly, shaking his head. You're contradicting yourself. First you say he's not innocent, now you're saying he did it for me. I said he had something to protect, they corrected. I didn't say it justified what he did. Jimin's mind raced, trying to piece it together. What did he do? Jimin demanded. Not vague answers, not half-truths. Tell me exactly what happened. The person was quiet for a moment. Then they spoke. There was a night, they said slowly, a situation that got out of control, someone got hurt. Jimin's chest tightened. Hurt how? He asked. A pause. Then, bad enough that it could have become a criminal case. Jimin felt his stomach drop. And Jungkook was involved, he said. Yes. And you covered it up. Yes. Jimin's breath grew uneven. Why would he do something like that? He asked, almost to himself. The person's eyes didn't leave him. Because they threatened to expose you. Jimin froze. What? They had something on you, they continued. Something that could have ruined your life if it got out. Jimin's heart started pounding harder. That's not possible, he said immediately. I haven't done anything. It doesn't have to be true, they cut in calmly. It just has to be believable. Silent. Heavy. Unsettling. Jimin's thoughts spiraled. You're saying, he began slowly, someone tried to use me against him. Yes. And Jimin swallowed hard, he did something to stop it. The person nodded once. Jimin's chest felt tight. What did he do? He asked again, quieter this time. The person didn't answer immediately. And that hesitation terrified him. What did he do? Jimin repeated, his voice sharper now. Finally. He crossed a line, they said. Jimin's breath hitched. What line? He pressed. The person held his gaze. The kind you don't come back from easily. Jimin's hands trembled slightly at his sides. No, he said, more to himself than to them. No, he wouldn't, he's not. You keep saying that, they murmured, but you don't actually know, do you? Jimin's eyes snapped up. I know him, he said, but this time, it sounded less certain. The person stepped even closer, their voice lowering. Do you know what he's capable of when he's desperate? Jimin didn't answer. Because suddenly, he wasn't sure. A memory flashed through his mind. Jungkook's expression earlier. The way his voice had broken. The way he had said asterisk, not this time. Jimin's chest tightened. Why didn't he tell me? He asked, almost in a whisper. The person's expression softened slightly. Because if you knew, they said, you might look at him differently. Jimin swallowed hard. And would I? He asked. A pause. Then, that depends on you. Silence filled the space again. Jimin felt like the ground beneath him was shifting, everything he thought he knew unraveling piece by piece. He was trying to protect me, Jimin said slowly, as if testing the idea. Yes, but he also hurt someone. Yes, and you covered it up. Yes. Jimin let out a shaky breath. And now you're forcing him into a marriage because of it. The person tilted their head slightly. I'm holding him accountable, they corrected. Jimin let out a sharp laugh. No, he said, you're controlling him. The person didn't deny it. Maybe, they said. Jimin's eyes darkened. This isn't justice, he said, it's manipulation. And yet, they replied calmly, it's working. Jimin clenched his jaw. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Jimin asked the one question that had been building in his chest since the beginning. Does he love you? The person blinked, slightly surprised. Then they smiled faintly. No, they said. Jimin's heart twisted. Then why are you doing this? He asked. The person's expression shifted again, something colder settling in. Because love isn't the point. Jimin stared at them. Then what is? They met his gaze directly. Power. The word echoed in the quiet space. Jimin felt a chill run through him. Everything about this, every piece of it, felt wrong. Dangerous. And you think this will end well? Jimin asked. The person's smile returned, faint but unsettling. It doesn't have to end well, they said. It just has to end the way I want it to. Jimin's fists tightened. No, he said. The person raised an eyebrow slightly. No, they repeated. Jimin stepped forward, his voice steady now despite the storm inside him. I'm not letting this happen. The person studied him, something almost curious in their expression. And what exactly are you going to do about it? They asked. Jimin didn't hesitate. I'm going to stop it. A small, quiet laugh. You think you can? Jimin's gaze didn't waver. I know I can. The confidence in his voice was new. Stronger. Different. The person watched him for a long moment. Then they nodded slightly, as if accepting a challenge. All right, they said, then try. Jimin held their gaze unflinching. Because for the first time since this all began, he wasn't just reacting anymore. He had made a decision. And this time, he wasn't walking away. The moment Jimin stepped out into the cold night air, the world felt louder than it should have been, like every sound had been sharpened just to overwhelm him. His heartbeat thudded in his ears, uneven, restless, refusing to calm down. He didn't think, he moved. Fast, almost reckless. His fingers trembled as he pulled his phone out, staring at Jungkook's name for a second longer than necessary before pressing call. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Jimin. Jungkook's voice came through, low, cautious, like he already knew something was wrong. Where are you? Jimin demanded, not even greeting him. There was a pause. Why? Don't do that, Jimin snapped immediately. Don't start hiding things again, just tell me where you are. Another pause. Then a quiet exhale. At the studio. I'm coming. Jimin. But Jimin had already hung up. He didn't trust himself to keep talking. Not yet. Not until he could see him. Not until he could look into Jungkook's eyes and figure out what was real and what wasn't. The studio lights were still on when Jimin arrived. Too bright. Too exposed. Like there was nowhere to hide. He didn't knock. Didn't hesitate. He pushed the door open hard enough that it slammed against the wall. Jungkook was there, exactly where he said he'd be. Standing in the middle of the room. Waiting. Of course he was waiting. His eyes immediately locked onto Jimin, something unreadable flickering across his face. You look like you ran here, Jungkook said quietly. Jimin didn't answer. He just walked forward. Each step heavy. Deliberate. Until he stopped right in front of him. Tell me the truth, Jimin said. Jungkook's expression tightened slightly. That depends on what you want to know. Jimin let out a bitter laugh. That's funny, he said, because I thought the truth wasn't supposed to come in pieces. Jungkook didn't react immediately. Who talked to you? He asked instead. Jimin's jaw clenched. So it's true. That was all the confirmation he needed. Jungkook looked away for a second, running a hand through his hair in frustration. It's not that simple, he muttered. Jimin stepped closer. Then make it simple, he shot back. Did you hurt someone? Silent. Heavy. Unavoidable. Jimin felt his chest tighten. Jungkook. I didn't mean to, Jungkook said finally, his voice low. Jimin's breath caught. That wasn't a denial. That was an admission. What happened? Jimin asked, softer now but more dangerous. Jungkook shook his head slightly. You don't need to know everything. Jimin's eyes darkened immediately. Don't decide that for me. I'm trying to protect you, Jungkook snapped suddenly. Stop saying that, Jimin shot back, his voice rising. Stop using that as an excuse for everything. Jungkook flinched. Just slightly. But Jimin saw it. And don't you dare tell me I don't need to know, Jimin continued, his voice shaking now. Because whatever this is, it's already affecting me, so I have every right to know. Jungkook stared at him, conflicted. You're not going to like it, he said quietly. Jimin let out a sharp breath. I already don't. Silent. Jungkook looked down at his hands for a moment, like he was trying to gather the words. There was someone, he began. They had something on you. Jimin's chest tightened again. I know that part, he said. What I don't know is what you did about it. Jungkook's jaw clenched. They weren't bluffing, he said. They had evidence, or something that looked real enough to ruin you. Jimin frowned. What kind of evidence? Jungkook hesitated. Something that could have destroyed your reputation, your career, everything you've built. Jimin felt a chill run through him. And you believed them, he asked. I didn't take the risk, Jungkook corrected sharply. Jimin stared at him. So what did you do? Jungkook didn't answer immediately. And that silence was louder than anything else. What did you do? Jimin repeated, his voice breaking slightly now. Jungkook finally looked up. I went to meet them. Jimin's heart pounded. Alone? Yes. And? Jungkook exhaled slowly. It was supposed to be a negotiation. Jimin laughed bitterly. Supposed to be never ends well. Jungkook didn't argue. They wanted money, he said, control. They wanted to keep using it whenever they felt like it. Jimin's expression hardened. And you said no. I said no. Then what? Jungkook's hands clenched at his sides. They pushed. Jimin's stomach dropped. How? They mentioned your name, Jungkook said, his voice tightening, over and over, like you were just leverage, like you didn't matter. Jimin swallowed hard. And you lost control, he said quietly. Jungkook didn't deny it. It wasn't supposed to go that far, he said. I just wanted to scare them, to make them back off. Jimin's voice came out barely above a whisper. What did you do? Jungkook closed his eyes for a brief second. I hit him. Jimin's breath hitched. And he fell. The words felt heavier now. Hard, Jungkook added. Silence filled the room. Jimin felt like the air had been sucked out completely. Is he dead? Jimin asked, his voice trembling despite his effort to stay composed. Jungkook shook his head quickly. No, but it was close. Jimin turned away, running both hands through his hair, trying to process it. You could have killed someone, he said. I know, Jungkook whispered. And then what? Jimin asked, turning back. You just walked away. No, Jungkook said, that's when they stepped in. Jimin's eyes narrowed. The same person forcing you into this marriage. Jungkook nodded. They cleaned it up, he said, made sure it never turned into a case. Jimin let out a hollow laugh. Of course they did. And in return, Jungkook trailed off. Jimin finished it for him. They owned you now. Jungkook didn't respond. Because he didn't need to. Jimin stared at him, something breaking in his expression. All of this, he said, his voice shaking, all of this happened because of me. No, Jungkook said immediately, don't do that. But it's true, Jimin snapped, if they didn't have something on me. They would have found something else, Jungkook cut in, people like that always do. Jimin shook his head. You don't know that. I do. Jungkook said firmly, because I've seen it. Jimin's chest tightened again. So what now? He asked. You just go along with it, marry someone you don't love because they told you to. Jungkook looked at him, something painful flickering in his eyes. What choice do I have? Jimin stepped closer. You have a choice, he said. You always have a choice. Jungkook let out a quiet, humorless laugh. Not this time. That's what you said before, Jimin whispered. Jungkook's expression faltered. Jimin's voice softened, but it cut deeper now. And I believed you. Silent. Heavy. You should have told me, Jimin said, from the beginning. Jungkook's gaze dropped. I was trying to keep you out of it. You don't get to decide that, Jimin said, his voice rising again. You don't get to protect me by lying to me. I wasn't lying. You were hiding the truth, Jimin shot back. That's not better. Jungkook flinched again. And this time it stayed. Jimin's voice broke slightly. I trusted you. I know, Jungkook said quietly. Do you? Jimin asked, because it doesn't feel like you do. Jungkook didn't answer. Because there was no good answer. Jimin took a step back, his breathing uneven now. So this is it, he asked. You're just going to go through with it. Jungkook's silence was enough. Jimin laughed again, but it sounded hollow. Unbelievable, he muttered. Jimin. No, Jimin cut him off, raising a hand. Don't. Jungkook froze. Jimin's eyes were glassy now, but he refused to let the tears fall. You don't get to explain this away, he said. You made your choice. Jungkook's voice was barely audible. I didn't choose this. Jimin shook his head slowly. But you're accepting it. That hurt more than anything else. Jungkook stepped forward. I'm trying to keep you safe. Jimin's expression hardened instantly. I don't need you to ruin your life to do that. Jungkook stopped. And I definitely didn't ask you to, Jimin added. The words landed like a final blow. Silence stretched between them, suffocating. Then Jimin took another step back. Further this time. Creating distance. Real distance. If you go through with this, Jimin said quietly, don't expect me to just stand there and watch. Jungkook's heart seemed to stop. What does that mean? He asked. Jimin met his gaze. It means I'm not done fighting. Jungkook's eyes widened slightly. Jimin, I'm going to stop this, Jimin said firmly. And for the first time, Jungkook looked afraid. Not of the person controlling him. Not of the consequences. But of Jimin. Because there was something different in his eyes now. Something unshakable. And for the first time since this began, Jungkook realized that Jimin wasn't the one being protected anymore. He was the one about to tear everything apart. The rain started without warning, slamming against the studio windows like something desperate to get in, or something trying to trap them inside. Jimin didn't move toward the door. Jungkook didn't move toward him. They stood there in the flickering white light, the tension between them so thick it felt almost visible, like a wire stretched too tight, ready to snap. You said you'd stop this, Jungkook said finally, his voice low, measured, but strained underneath. What does that even mean, Jimin? Jimin let out a slow breath, his eyes never leaving Jungkook's face. It means I'm done letting you decide everything alone, he said. Jungkook's jaw tightened. This isn't something you can just step into, he replied. You don't understand how deep this goes. Then explain it, Jimin shot back immediately. Because all I see right now is you throwing your life away for people who don't care about you. They care enough to destroy everything if I don't cooperate, Jungkook snapped. Jimin stepped closer, rainwater still clinging to his coat, his presence suddenly overwhelming. And you think giving them what they want will make them stop, he demanded. You really believe that? Jungkook hesitated. Just for a second. But Jimin caught it. You don't even believe it yourself, Jimin said, his voice dropping sharper now. You're just hopping. Jungkook exhaled harshly, running a hand through his damp hair. Hope is all I have right now. No, Jimin said, it's not. Jungkook looked at him. Then what is? He asked, almost challenging. Jimin didn't hesitate. Me. The word landed heavily. Jungkook blinked, caught off guard. Don't, he said quietly, don't make this about you. It already is about me, Jimin fired back. Everything you did, everything you're doing, it's because of me, remember? Jungkook's expression hardened. That's exactly why you should stay out of it. Jimin let out a humorless laugh. You still don't get it, he said, shaking his head. I'm already in it. You dragged me into it the moment you decided to handle everything alone. Jungkook took a step forward, his voice dropping dangerously low. And I'd do it again. Jimin froze. What? I'd make the same choice, Jungkook said, his eyes intense now, unwavering, every single time. Something cracked in Jimin's expression. That's not something you should be proud of, he said, his voice quieter now, but cutting deeper. It's not about pride, Jungkook replied. It's about you being safe. And what about you? Jimin demanded. Do you even hear yourself? You almost killed someone, Jungkook. You're being forced into a marriage you don't want. You're losing everything, and you're acting like it's fine. I said it's not fine, Jungkook snapped. I said it's necessary. No, Jimin said, stepping even closer, his voice rising again. It's not necessary, it's what they want you to believe. Jungkook's eyes flashed with frustration. You think I haven't thought about that, he shot back. You think I haven't tried to find another way. Then why did you tell me? Jimin countered instantly. Why did you trust me enough to let me help you find one? Jungkook opened his mouth, then closed it again. Because there was no easy answer. Jimin saw it, and it hurt. You didn't trust me, Jimin said, softer now, but heavier than before. Jungkook's voice dropped. I didn't want to lose you. Jimin's breath hitched. Then congratulations, he whispered, because you're doing a great job of it right now. Silence crashed over them. The rain grew louder, almost violent now, like it was echoing everything they weren't saying. Jungkook stepped forward suddenly, closing the distance completely. I'm not losing you, he said, his voice firm, almost desperate. That's the one thing I won't let happen. Jimin looked up at him, his eyes searching. You don't get to decide that either, he said. Jungkook's hand twitched slightly at his side, like he wanted to reach out but wasn't sure if he should. Then tell me what to do, he said quietly. The vulnerability in his voice was new. Raw. Unfiltered. Jimin stared at him for a long moment. Then, fight, he said. Jungkook's brows furrowed. I am fighting. No, Jimin said, shaking his head. You're surrendering in advance. Jungkook's expression darkened. You don't understand what we're up against. Then make me understand, Jimin pushed. Stop treating me like I'm something fragile that needs to be protected. You are not fragile, Jungkook said immediately. Then stop acting like I am, Jimin shot back. Jungkook fell silent again. Jimin stepped even closer, his voice lowering, more controlled now, but filled with intensity. Who are they? He asked. Not the vague version, not the safe version, I want names. Jungkook hesitated. Jimin. Names, Jimin repeated. Jungkook clenched his jaw. You don't want to know. I do. It will only make things worse. They're already worse, Jimin snapped, so stop deciding for me. Jungkook's chest rose and fell sharply as he struggled with himself. Then finally. It's not just one person, he admitted. Jimin's eyes narrowed. What does that mean? It's a network, Jungkook said. People with influence, power, the kind that doesn't get exposed because they control what gets seen. Jimin felt a chill run down his spine. And the person you're supposed to marry, he asked. Jungkook's gaze flickered. They're part of it. Jimin's expression hardened instantly. So this isn't just blackmail, he said slowly. This is ownership. Jungkook didn't respond. Because again, he didn't need to. Jimin laughed, but there was no humor in it. They really think they can control you like that. They already are, Jungkook said quietly. Something in Jimin snapped. No, he said firmly, not anymore. Jungkook looked at him, something uncertain flickering in his eyes. What are you planning? He asked. Jimin held his gaze. I'm going to break it. Jungkook's breath caught. Break what? Their control, Jimin said. Whatever they're holding over you, whatever deal they think they have, I'm going to destroy it. Jungkook shook his head immediately. That's not how this works. Then explain how it does, Jimin challenged. You don't just walk into something like this and tear it down, Jungkook said. You'll get hurt. Jimin's expression didn't change. Maybe, he said, but at least I won't be standing still while everything falls apart. Jungkook stepped closer again, his voice dropping. If something happens to you because of this. It won't, Jimin cut in. You don't know that. And you don't know that it will, Jimin fired back. Jungkook stared at him, frustration and fear colliding in his eyes. You're being reckless. And you're being controlled, Jimin shot back. Silence. Then, Jimin's voice softened just slightly. Look at me, he said. Jungkook did. I'm not walking away from you, Jimin continued, no matter how messy this gets, no matter how complicated. Jungkook's expression wavered. You should, he said quietly, it would be easier. Jimin shook his head. I don't want easy. Jungkook swallowed hard. Then what do you want? Jimin held his gaze, unwavering. It's you. The word hung between them, heavier than anything else that had been said. Jungkook's breath hitched. You don't get to say things like that right now, he said, his voice barely steady. Why not? Jimin challenged. Because it makes this harder for you. Yes, Jungkook admitted. Good, Jimin said. It should be hard, it should hurt, because maybe then you'll stop pretending this is something you can just endure. Jungkook looked away, his chest tight. I'm not pretending, he said. Then prove it, Jimin replied immediately. Jungkook turned back to him. How? Jimin stepped even closer, close enough that their breaths almost mixed. Don't marry them. The words were quiet, but they carried weight. Jungkook's heart pounded violently in his chest. You're asking me to risk everything, he said. Jimin didn't back down. I'm asking you to choose. Jungkook's voice dropped to a whisper. And if I choose you? Jimin's eyes didn't waver. Then we deal with everything else together. Silent, heavy, dangerous. Jungkook searched his face, like he was trying to find doubt, hesitation, anything that would make this easier. But there was none. Just certainty. And that terrified him more than anything. Because choosing Jimin didn't just mean love. It meant war. And for the first time. Jungkook wasn't sure which one scared him more. The rain had softened by the time silence finally settled between them, no longer violent, no longer desperate, just a steady rhythm against the glass, like the world itself was holding its breath. Jungkook didn't move. Jimin didn't step back. They stood impossibly close, caught in the fragile space between a choice and its consequences. And if I choose you, Jungkook had asked. The question still lingered in the air, but now it carried something different, less fear, more inevitability. Jimin's gaze never wavered. Then stop running, he said quietly. Stop letting them decide who you become. Jungkook let out a slow, unsteady breath, his eyes closing for just a second. For the first time in what felt like forever, everything slowed. The pressure, the fear, the suffocating weight of expectations. And in that stillness, one truth rose above everything else, clear, undeniable, and impossible to ignore. I'm tired, Jungkook admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. Jimin's expression softened, but he didn't interrupt. I'm tired of being controlled, Jungkook continued, tired of making choices that don't feel like mine, tired of thinking the only way to protect you is to destroy myself. Jimin swallowed hard. Then don't, he said. Jungkook opened his eyes. And this time there was no hesitation in them. They're not going to stop, Jungkook said, even if I refuse. I know, Jimin replied. They'll come after you. I know. They'll ruin everything. Jimin's voice was steady. Then we rebuild. Something shifted in Jungkook's chest, something heavy breaking apart, something he hadn't realized he'd been holding onto for so long. Fear. Not gone, but no longer in control. You really mean that, Jungkook said, almost in disbelief. Jimin gave the smallest nod. I'm not leaving, he said. Jungkook stared at him, searching, waiting for the doubt that never came. And then, he made his choice. Okay, Jungkook said. The word was quiet. But it changed everything. Jimin's breath caught. Okay, he repeated. Jungkook nodded slowly. I'm not marrying them. For a moment, the world seemed to stop entirely. No rain. No noise. No past. Just that one decision, hanging between them like something fragile and powerful all at once. Jimin let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding, something like relief and disbelief colliding in his chest. "You're serious," he said. Jungkook's lips curved into the faintest, most tired smile. "For the first time in a long time," he said, "I am." Jimin laughed softly, almost breathless. "You have no idea what you just started." Jungkook's gaze sharpened, but there was no fear in it now. "No," he said, "but I know who I'm starting it with." The words settled between them, warm and steady, anchoring something that had been unraveling for far too long. Jimin stepped closer, closing the last bit of distance that had remained. "You're going to have to tell me everything," he said. Jungkook nodded. "I will. No more secrets. No more secrets." Jimin studied him for a moment longer, making sure, really making sure. Then he exhaled, the tension in his shoulders finally easing, just slightly. "Good," he said. Because this time, they were choosing the same side. It didn't take long for the consequences to arrive. They always did. The next morning, the message came. "Short, precise, cold. You made the wrong decision." Jungkook stared at the screen, his jaw tightening. Jimin, standing beside him, didn't even need to ask. "They know," Jungkook said. "Of course they do," Jimin replied. There was no panic in his voice. Just clarity. "What now?" Jungkook asked. Jimin took a moment before answering, his gaze steady, his mind already moving. "Now we stop reacting," he said, "and we start acting." Jungkook looked at him. "And how do we do that?" Jimin's lips pressed into a thin line. "We take away their leverage." Jungkook's eyes darkened slightly. "You mean the evidence?" Jimin nodded. "If they lose what they're holding over us," he said, "they lose control." Jungkook considered it. It was dangerous. Risky. Possibly reckless. But for the first time, it didn't feel impossible. "Then we find it," Jungkook said. Jimin met his gaze. "And we end this." It wasn't easy. Nothing about it was. Every step forward came with resistance, with shadows that stretched longer the closer they got to the truth. Names surfaced, connections unraveled. The network Jungkook had mentioned revealed itself piece by piece, not as something untouchable, but as something human. Flawed, careless in places. And that was enough. They didn't fight loudly. They fought smart. Quiet moves, careful risks. Trust that had been broken slowly rebuilding through every shared decision, every truth laid bare without hesitation. And somewhere along the way, the fear that had once controlled everything lost its grip. Not all at once, but enough. Enough for Jungkook to stand without looking over his shoulder. Enough for Jimin to stop wondering if he was fighting alone. The final confrontation didn't happen in chaos. It happened in silence. A room, a table, the same person who had once smiled, so calmly now watching, as everything they had built began to slip through their fingers. "You think this changes anything?" they asked, their voice still composed, but tighter now. Jungkook didn't answer immediately. Jimin stepped forward instead. "It already has," he said. The evidence was there. Laid out. Irrefutable. The leverage that once held them in place, now meaningless. The power dynamic broken. For the first time, the person across from them didn't look in control. They looked cornered. "This isn't over," they said. Jungkook finally spoke. "No," he agreed, "but it's not yours anymore." Silence followed. Heavy, final, and in that silence, something ended. Weeks later, the world had returned to something that resembled normal. Not the same. Never the same. But quieter. Lighter. Jimin stood by the window, watching the evening sky bleed into soft shades of gold and blue. Behind him, Jungkook leaned against the doorway, arms crossed loosely, eyes fixed on him. "You're thinking too much again," Jungkook said. Jimin smiled faintly. "I always think too much." Jungkook pushed himself off the wall, walking closer. "About what?" he asked. Jimin glanced at him. "About how close we were to losing everything." Jungkook stopped beside him. "But we didn't," he said. Jimin nodded slowly. "No," he agreed, "we didn't." A quiet moment passed between them. Then Jimin turned fully, studying him. "Do you regret it?" he asked. Jungkook frowned slightly. "Regret what?" "Choosing this," Jimin said, "choosing me." Jungkook didn't hesitate. "No." The answer was immediate. "Certain." Jimin searched his face, like he was still getting used to that kind of certainty. "And you," Jungkook asked, "do you regret staying?" Jimin's lips curved into a small, genuine smile. "Not even once." Something warm settled between them then, something steady and real. Not built on fear. Not built on sacrifice. But on choice. Jungkook reached out, his hand brushing lightly against Jimin, not forcing, not demanding, just there. Jimin didn't pull away. Instead, he closed the distance himself. And this time, there were no secrets left between them. No shadows waiting to pull them apart. Just the quiet understanding that whatever came next, they would face it together. Not because they had to, but because they chose to.